Thank you very much, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. Tonight's first consideration item is the City Council resolution supporting House of Representatives Concurrent Resolution 16, efforts to exonerate the Port Chicago 50. Just want to start off, certainly I encourage everyone to really look into the history of this. This is a horrific incident that happened in many ways, but it is something that really I encourage everyone to understand a little bit more about something that happened in our region. So an explosion occurred during World War II at Port Chicago on July 17, 1944. And if I recall correctly, I believe some windows even blew out in Pittsburg, or there was damage here as well. So that just tells you the extent of the explosion. Unfortunately, at that explosion, approximately 320 men died on duty. And to get into to where this really gets into some unpleasant topic, you had instantly trying to clean up the impact there from the end of July. African American sailors were basically told that they had to go in, clean it up, deal with the ramifications of the explosion, and white sailors were basically told they could take leave. They could leave, and really that was not afforded to the African American sailors. And the conditions weren't changed either. Being in World War II, they instantly switched over to Mare Island, and told many of the sailors who had to clean up the aftermath, I believe it was approximately 328, to march down and start loading the ships again without changing any of the conditions. And the African American sailors, in a nonviolent manner, stopped and just asked for better conditions and safety. Unfortunately, they were ushered onto a boat and told that they were committing treason if they did not act and follow the orders. 50 of them refused to return to work until the conditions were improved. They were found pretty quickly, very quickly, in the way the Navy runs, found guilty of conspiracy to commit mutiny and sentenced to 15 years in prison. Thurgood Marshall appealed the case to the Navy Judge Advocate General. They served 205 days in prison and then were released to their enlistments, but their criminal records remained. So this city has passed twice before resolutions trying to exonerate the Port Chicago 50. In September of 1999, at the request of Congressman Miller, we did so. And then when the state was looking at this in 2016, the city did this as well. The present resolution you have before you, Congressman Mark DeSaulnier, Barbara Lee, and Garamendi have introduced the House Concurrent Resolution 16, trying to find exoneration for these 50. So staff's recommendation is to adopt the resolution supporting the Concurrent Resolution 16, recognizing the victims of the Port Chicago explosion of July 17, 1944, and to exonerate the Port Chicago 50, who were unjustly court-martialed by the Navy. This resolution is part of an ongoing effort to right the historic injustice of a wrongful conviction. That concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. And just to add more to the story for those who may not know about the history, out at Port Chicago, they were loading 2 ships of munition. So they're loading all these weapons on the ship. And the African American sailors was the ones that were loading these weapons. And the incident occurred because they were basically being challenged of who can load the ship the fastest. And so the way they loaded, it kind of like rolls down and then it clicks and hit each other. And then another one comes down and click and hit each other. But they're in competition of who can load it the fastest. And, they were told by their white naval officers to do this, and so they were following instructions to get these ships loaded well, an explosion happened and the first ship exploded and then the second one followed right behind it. But for a lot of you, you might have family members who might talk about the town of Port Chicago. It actually was a town. I have my aunt talk to me about it a lot, and she's 87 now, but she talks about how she used to go there and hang out, and that's how she met her husband. So, you know, it's really remarkable when you learn the history of the Bay Area and how so many African Americans came here during the Great Migration to work and be part of the military, whether it was San Francisco, Oakland, you know, here, Concord Naval Weapons Station, Port Chicago, even right here, Camp Stoneman and Mare Island. We have a real strong history here, and it's sad that when they were directed to go back on site, they had to go and clean up the remains of an explosion and go back to do the same unsafety practices of loading those weapons in the same way. And so it seems as though it should be a no-brainer that these 50 naval sailors should have just been exonerated because they refused to go back and load the ship, but you know, that's not the case. And so we have at the mayor's conference, you have different cities that are doing resolutions to support this effort of exoneration of the Port Chicago 50. So I would like to see if my council members have any questions or comments with regards to this agenda item. Seeing none, Madam Clerk, are there any public comment on this agenda item?
No, there are not.
All right, bringing it back to council. I would like to make a motion to move the adoption of a city council resolution supporting House of Representatives concurrent resolution 16 efforts to exonerate the Port Chicago 50. Do I have a second?
Through the mayor, I'll second that motion.
Seconded by Vice Mayor Banales. Please cast your votes. Thank you. Motion passes 4-0.